Hello everyone and welcome back to Let's Play Blaster Master 02. In the last part we fought the final boss of the main game, got the bad ending, did the side quests to get the true ending, and now we're finally on the true ending route as Eve alone. Eve is much less capable in combat than Jason was. She only has 2 attacks. Her own unique blast counter and her iHix's paw pad attack. iHix being the little silver cat paw gauntlet she's wearing the entire game that I think is really cute. Honestly, Eve's design in 2 is probably my favorite of her designs in the trilogy. So, your main thing you're going to be doing in these sections isn't actively trying to fight enemies, but to avoid them and play defensively. You are just trying to walk from one place to another to find your end destination. Along the way, there's going to be walls that are impossible to destroy unless you destroy the eyes that are generating them, which go down in one iHix paw strike. Essentially, we're in a giant puzzle section, almost. Everything's kind of foggy, but am I fighting the mutants? My body feels light. What is this power? Considering the damage done by the mutant cells, my body shouldn't even be functioning without getting energy from GAIA-SOPHIA. Yet, here I am, moving freely outside of GAIA-SOPHIA. I have no idea how it's possible, but now I can purify the mutants. There's so much I don't understand, but I've got no time to think. With this power, I can save Jason. Something important to note about the iHix. Its paw pad attack, while it can be used as an outright attack, yes, it can also be used like Jason's absorber weapon, where if you put the paw pad forward, it can block projectiles, and that's actually also doable, I believe, here in the side-scrolling sections. The side-scrolling sections are much more puzzle platformer than puzzle avoidance, because your goal is to get to the end without fighting the enemies, while pushing any blocks you have with the iHix as well. But something I should note, unlike with Jason, you can actively use Eve's blast counter here in the side-scrolling sections as well. In fact, you're going to want to in order to get through things safely, because it slows down time. Be careful of the purple water, by the way, it is poisonous. With that said, occasionally next to any given body of water, you'll see this weird little bulb thing pouring out of it, more water. You can hit that with your iHix to purify it, and thus the water, making it safe to walk through. With that said, it's not a permanent purification, does restore itself after a couple of seconds. So Eve's blast counter is the Unchained DDF, the name of which is actually a reference to another Inti-Create series Gal Gun, where the character Ikoro has her own DDF, which stands for Doki Doki Field. When you use the Unchained DDF, time slows down around you incredibly. It uses about 20% of her counter gauge to use it, and it slows them down for about 10 seconds. And if you counter something with the DDF outright, they are stunned for a very long portion of that time. You're going to be using the Unchained DDF a lot, so keep an eye on your counterpoints. Thankfully, when it's not in effect, Eve has a native counterpoint regeneration going on. But even then, if you use the DDF too much, you will outpace that regeneration. Plus, I think when you're actively using the blast counter, the regeneration pauses, period, until it ends in a few seconds afterwards. So keep an eye on that. You're going to be using it a lot. With that said, that does allow me to get into one difference I actually haven't directly talked about between Eve and Jason. When you use a blast counter as Jason, obviously your counter gauge drains and all that. But whenever you leave a top-down section, the counter gauge immediately refills. Because you can use the Unchained DDF in both the side-scrolling and top-down segments, though, Eve does not have that benefit. At least you have the regeneration to keep in mind, but still be careful. Weirdly, though, because of how little Eve can do combat-wise, the most annoying enemies in these sections are these rock enemies we've been seeing since Blaster Master 01's earliest sections, because their movement towards you is just so hard to get around. Yeah, the slowdown helps with the DDF around, but it doesn't help enough to make it not scary. You can take a lot of hits here very quickly. This section is genuinely hard. You remember the planetoid we did several parts ago now with the ladder chaining you had to do with Jason? I died a lot there in my first playthrough. I think I died more here. And frankly, due to that, I hated this section in my first playthrough. That death there was intentional, by the way, to restore my health. Because it's time for the lair of Capel. Capel's only attack is to bounce up and down across the room, but what you need to do is jump up the platforms that generate whenever you're in the water to reach the top, get a crate, and then hit it with it. Upon doing so, it'll split into 2 smaller ones that bounce faster. I think it does that 2 or 3 times each. If you mess up a jump, though, you might notice the platforms do disappear when you jump off of them and land on the next one. So if you mess up in such a way where the platforms are unusable, you have to fall back down to the water and let a new set spawn in. To my knowledge, there's not a single pattern and setup of platforms that allows you to hit Compel more than once per cycle. So that means you're guaranteed to do this in a certain amount, unless you miss outright, in which case, well, you're jumping back down and trying again. Thankfully, they realized that this could get annoying, so they at least place health pickups on certain patterns of platforms that will respawn whenever that set comes back up again. So you're never out of luck completely, but this can take a while. Like this section period, honestly. I like this section a lot nowadays, if only because I, for one thing, appreciate some minor nuances that kind of come back into play in 3. But also, on a first playthrough, this section's rough because you're absorbing all the information and probably aren't noticing some of the parts that you can use to your advantage, like the DDF, like the fact you can use the iHix's attack as a shield and all that. And it just felt slow, clunky, and tedious. Now that I realize I meant to take it slower, it feels better. With that said, I always slightly fear this section, if only because it's incredibly tense despite it not maybe looking so much. Because whenever you're out of one of the top-down sections, checkpoints are sparse enough here that a death can become incredibly punishing, sometimes requiring 2 to 3 minutes worth of backtracking, and that can be rough. When you're in the top-down sections or in a boss fight, there's less to fear because usually they place a checkpoint right before there, or a entrance and exit to a top-down area is a checkpoint in and of itself. But still, be careful here. It can be rough. Also, the further you get into this fight, the more the DDF becomes necessary, as the smaller the Compel bits get, the faster they bounce. Especially if you, say, take them out in size order, so you go the largest, then the 2 medium ones, then you got 4 of the small ones around. That can be a little iffy to platform around. Be careful, this fight can be annoying at worst, but it's not the worst in the game on the whole. Does end kind of suddenly, though. Was kind of expecting an explosion there. Checkpoint up there, but we can't grab that yet, so it's time for another cavern. So while we go through this cavern, let's start talking about something I haven't talked about yet. This game's DLC, besides the Kana raising simulator thing. Namely, this game, like Blaster Master 01, has 2 playable guest characters that have their own campaigns that are largely lacking cutscenes, but it's more of a gameplay shift. One of them is Copen, your Virgil/Proto-Man, so to speak, for the Gunvolt series. He's a bit interesting in that while he has a tank, it's not his main thing. Copen, in both top-down and side-scrolling, does best on his own. He's all about flying high and shooting all across the screen. He takes 0 fall damage, he can hover in mid-air, he can Mega Man X up walls, and this is a very key difference, and this gets into something I haven't talked about with Jason. When you're in a side-scrolling section as Jason, and you get hit by an enemy, you take double damage. Copen takes the standard damage amount you would take from everything else. With that said, he also starts every planet on foot. He has a tank and you can call in it at checkpoints, but it's only needed for certain sections. His default attack is a laser beam that's fully automatic and goes across the screen, but it does do less damage than the G-Blaster and G-Crusher shots by default, unless an enemy is tagged. You tag an enemy by dashing into them using his bullet dash, which is a mid-air dash that Copen can do in any of the 6 directions up to 3 times. And you replenish those amounts by dashing into enemies and tagging them and just bouncing from enemy to enemy. Copen's very technical in his playstyle, but he can pile on the damage pretty quick, and he has his own set of sub-weapons. He also has Pervasion, where essentially, when you have at least 1 dash available, which is called a bullet, taking a hit will consume 2 instead of taking away any life, so you can just avoid damage. And that will even trigger in response to any environmental hazards that are around. He also has his own blast counter, which is the Twin Shredder, where when an enemy is marked, Copen and his buddy Lola will dash across the screen and slash that enemy, and then you can just do that for every other enemy that's on screen when you do it. It does cost a lot to use even once, though, like 3/4 of his counter gauge, so you can shred through that quickly. I'm not going to go all into his sub-weapons and all of them because there's a lot. They do notably replace basically any sub-weapon Jason can get in areas, so you do have to still explore with Copen to reach his full strength. He's a fun playstyle, and he's very technical. If you really like the Mega Man Zero games or the Gunvolt games, he's a fun playstyle to toy around with how they adapt that into a top-down and side-scrolling view like this. The DLC characters for this game are overall very cheap. Each one of them is only $2, whereas I think the Kana Racing Simulator is like $5. I recommend picking them up. The other DLC character for Zero 2 is Empress, which is a character from Dragon Marked for Death, a Nancy Creates game I have yet to play, but I apparently should before I play Gunvolt 3 for reasons. Empress, because her game is more of like an RPG, actively displays damage numbers whenever you deal damage. We're not sure if it's 1-to-1 with the internal damage math, but apparently 50 damage for her is the equivalent of 1 G-Crusher shot. She shares a lot of traits with Copen physically, where she can jump twice as high, which I don't think I mentioned. She doesn't take fall damage. She does better outside of her tank normally, but because she doesn't have the bullet dash, they do add a lot of platforms to the level design so she can get around. Her whole thing is that she has multiple attack buttons, like having a sword that can do either a quick strike while moving or a 3-hit combo when you're stationary that kind of resembles Zero's 3-hit combo for Mega Man Zero. She can strike enemies through terrain, break blocks, and generate her dragon points, which she uses, cast her dragon spells, which are her range attacks. She does have a number of different swords that have some different bonuses, like some do better damage with your magic attacks, some will do better damage for your counters, all that jazz. Her main sub-weapons are range attacks that just use your dragon points to cast magic, essentially, that do decent damage to begin with. But she has her own set of blast counters that's more than one, like she can just reflect things outright, like the Vector Reflector. She can just dash towards enemies. She has the counterattack. She's a lot closer to Jason sub-weapon-wise than Copen is, but she's still an interesting enough playstyle visually. I might showcase her at some point as well. When and if I do a Kana Racing Simulator playthrough, I'll probably do a proper bonus video for the main portion of Blaster Master Zero 2 that just showcases Copen and Empress in more detail than what I'm saying now. And I probably should do that at some point. Maybe when I do that for Zero 2, I'll go back and also record some, like, showcases for the characters that were DLC in Zero 1 and just add that to LP, even if it's years down the line. Also, if you thought Dig Rawler was mysteriously missing from the boss rush and that was weird, this is why you have to fight them as Eve here. Because the iHix's push attack is very catered to this fight. By and large, not too hard. I feel like they made it a little less aggressive for this fight because you don't have nearly as much you can do to counter some of its other attacks with Eve, but oh well. What do we got here? A broken blaster rifle. A blaster rifle belonging to someone other than Jason cannot be used in this state. A broken blaster rifle? But this isn't Jason's. What's it doing here? Good question. Maybe we'll find out more as we investigate more. So, on a first playthrough, I think I was here for upwards of 2 hours, whereas I think by the end of next part, we're done with it in less than 40 minutes, maybe just over 40 minutes. So, a first playthrough here is definitely a lot longer and a lot more annoying. Which, the first playthrough of a game is usually longer to begin with for scattered reasons, but it feels the worst in this game here, just because of how cruel this section can be for a first-timer. Well, can't go that way. What do we got over here? Oh, great.
Your struggles are meaningless, you defective doll. Looking for your precious Jason? There's no way he's still alive.
Garuda? Leibniz, how did you get here?
Who knows? What does it matter? Knowing won't change anything. Because I'm going to crush you right here and now.
Ah, great. Huh? Is that... No way.
Hey, what do you think you're...
A metal attacker? Behind Garuda, another metal attacker appeared, alongside a lone girl.
Are you MA pilots? Nice to meet you. My name's Elfie. I'm this MA's support droid.
I'm Sophia the Third support droid, Eve. What are you doing here?
Well, while fighting some mutants, we got swept up and sent to this interdimensional space. Then we encountered a mutant cocoon and...
What's a mutant cocoon?
A mutant even more powerful than a mutant overlord. Much more, in fact. It damaged our MA, and I became separated from my partner. So I repaired our MA, and now I'm waiting for him here.
Her partner? That blaster rifle I found, could it be? I handed her the blaster rifle.
This is Roddy's. I see, so he's already...
Elfie.
Even though I repaired our MA, it was already too late.
Stop that, right now! I can't listen to this, you damn mechanical dolls. Acting like you're human beings. I can't stand it. I won't take it. I'll tear you apart, both of you!
How sad. So you lost your partner too. I understand your sadness, but even though we feel the same, you want to take it out on Eve?
You're wrong! I didn't lose her. I threw her away, that doll!
So you won't admit it. In a way, that's even sadder.
Who do you think you are? What do you know about sadness? How could you know? You have no emotions. No heart, no soul. You're nothing but puppets.
But we do. After all, that's all I am now. That soul is all that's left of me.
What?
You're a spirit?
Yeah, something like that. You see, I was injured while fighting the mutant cocoon. I finished repairing our MA, but by that time I could no longer...
That's ridiculous.
Since you're inside your MA, you should be able to tell, right? You won't pick up any readings from me.
But that's impossible.
What you and I have been through, to impose that on someone else, even as she's right there watching over you?
How do you know about Lucia?
Please, don't deny her. Her life and time with you.
You, Eve, you have them, don't you? The interplanetary all-purpose markers from the other MAs.
Huh? Do I have something like that? As I spoke, I remembered. The items we received from the MA pilots we met throughout our journey.
Those markers can create a wormhole directly to their MAs from anywhere in the universe. Don't you dare lose them until you find Jason, at least.
Leibniz, are you?
I know you don't have to say it. I'm leaving now. I've got something I need to take care of.
Take care of?
It's nothing for you to worry about. Shouldn't you be thinking about Jason instead?
As he said that, Garuda flew off into the distance.
Yay, that's fabulous. I'm so glad you made up. Oh, Eve, would you take our MA for us?
Huh?
You need it, don't you? In order to complete your mission? I can't operate it by myself anymore.
Elfie. Got it. I'll happily accept it.
Good. Please take care of it. I'm glad I got to see you before the end, Eve. May bravery guide you.
With that, Elfie disappeared from sight. This vehicle's inventor is the same as Sophia III's. They're sisters. Thanks to Elfie, it's equipped with a bunch of additional modules. However, since the frame is damaged, the XL Blast is currently locked. Basic operations are the same as the Sophia series. Alright, I shouldn't have any problems piloting it. Elfie, thank you. It's an honor to use you in Roddy's metal attacker. Nora MAO2. Let's see, its name is... Here we go, Andrea! We now have a unique metal attacker that has its entirely different set of items. And you might as well bind the two weapons that aren't the main missiles to the shortcut buttons. We also have the returning SP bar from Blaster Master 01, but we're gonna go more into how Andrea works next time. With that, I'm gonna need to end this off here. Thank you guys for watching, and in part 13, now that we're armed with Andrea, it's time to go try and find Jason. See you guys then.